Hello, you're watching foodoffensive.com's Fukushima weekly update, and I can't believe this is number 4 already. I've been doing this 4 weeks straight. This is the 4th one, and been trying to keep up on it. I'm a little bit behind, so you probably see 2 of these come out fairly quickly after one another, but I'm working on a new setup here studio-wise and a more permanent solution so I can just hop in here, set up in 30 minutes, shoot real quick, break down, and be done. But that's limited budget and limited time, so I'm trying to balance the two. And so basically what I'm trying to do is bring you news and updates about Fukushima, recent stuff I'm going to go back to, been in the past year or so, just go over different things and kind of leading up to now, hopefully get some people on for interviews. I've got one in the works right now, someone that actually reached out to me, and so hopefully get them on, and that would be so wonderful. Do a little video Skype interview and just see what they have to say, get their perspective on it. I'll talk a little bit about that as the time comes. I don't want to overpromise, so until then we'll just stick with me here by myself presenting the news to you. Hopefully the new document cam shots are working out and are smooth and getting those linked up to my voice and things like that. And so without further ado, this is the weekly Fukushima update number 4, and this particular week I'm covering a couple of things, but it's basically surrounding some testing that was done. Basically, there was some soil samples taken in Tokyo, and the title of the article that I saw was Tokyo soil would be considered toxic waste in the U.S., and it caught my attention. I think that's a pretty big deal. And so before I go into that actual story and the gentleman that's on the forefront of that, I want to look at this article from Infowars.com by Alexander Higgins. It says TEPCO has not enough money to handle the Fukushima nuclear reactor 4 problems. This was in April 21st, 2012, just a few weeks ago. And basically it says the problems at reactor number 4 are the greatest short-term threat to humanity and has the potential to destroy our world, and TEPCO doesn't have the money to fix them. If you've seen my other videos, TEPCO is the Tokyo Electric Power Company. That's what it stands for. And the article goes on, just in the introduction here is what I'm looking at. The problem at Fukushima reactor number 4, which is being dubbed the greatest short-term threat to humanity and has the potential to destroy our world and civilization as we know it. Now, nuclear engineer Arnie Gunderson, who is one of the only people providing objective scientific analysis about the Fukushima nuclear fallout, believes, based on his analysis of the problems, that TEPCO simply doesn't have enough money to deal with the issues there. And I'm not going to go into his interview that talks about this. It was on WBAI 5 o'clock shadow show on April 17th, and there's about 25 minutes into the program talks about that, and I'm not going to get into that in this particular episode. I will show you a video of Arnie talking about the soil samples he took, and that's why I kind of introduced him in a way with this. He's kind of on the forefront, and like the article says, one of the only people providing objective scientific analysis about the Fukushima nuclear fallout. And so basically there's a video, and I'm going to show that right now. I'm going to introduce that real quick. It says, of course, his website, fairewinds.org, F-A-I-R-E, winds.org. A little bit about this video. It says, while traveling in Japan several weeks ago, Fairewinds' Arnie Gunderson took soil samples in Tokyo public parks, playgrounds, and rooftop gardens. All the samples would be considered nuclear waste if found here in the U.S. This level of contamination is currently being discovered throughout Japan. At the U.S. NRC Regulatory Information Conference in Washington, D.C., March 13th to March 15th, the NRC's chairman, Dr. Gregory Jaczko, emphasized his concern that the NRC and the nuclear industry presently do not consider the costs of mass evacuations and radioactive contamination in their cost-benefit analysis used to license nuclear power plants. Furthermore, Fairewinds believes that evacuation costs near a U.S. nuclear plant could easily exceed $1 trillion, and contaminated land would be uninhabitable for generations. Now let's go to that video right now of Arnie explaining that and showing him actually getting the samples, and then we'll look at the test results here in a second.
The events at Fukushima reinforce that any nuclear accident with public health and safety or environmental consequences of that magnitude is inherently unacceptable. While we focused on the radiological consequences of this event, I believe we cannot ignore the large social and economic consequences such an event poses to any country with a nuclear facility that deals with such a crisis. In Japan, more than 90,000 people remain displaced from their homes and land, with some having little prospect for a return to their previous lifestyle in the foreseeable future. While not easy to characterize, these are significant hardships on these people, and they are inherently unacceptable. So as we look to the future, and we look in a proactive way, we ultimately will have to address the issue of how we deal with nuclear events that lead to significant land contamination and displacement, perhaps permanently, of people from their homes and their livelihoods and their communities.
What you just heard was the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's chairman, Gregory Yasko, saying that the NRC doesn't take into account mass evacuations and people not getting back on their land for centuries when it does a cost-benefit analysis as to whether or not a nuclear plant should be licensed. I'm Arnie Gunderson from Fairwinds, and today I'm at the Regulatory Information Conference put on by the NRC in Washington, D.C. So today, I'm in Washington, D.C. A couple weeks ago, though, I was in Tokyo. And when I was in Tokyo, I took some samples. Now, I didn't look for the highest radiation spot. I just went around with 5 plastic bags, and when I found an area, I just scooped up some dirt and put it in the bag. One of those samples was from a crack in the sidewalk. Another one of those samples was from a children's playground that had been previously decontaminated. Another sample had come from some moss on the side of the road. Another sample came from the roof of an office building that I was at. And the last sample was right across the street from the main judicial center in downtown Tokyo. Well, I brought those samples back, declared them through customs, and sent them to the lab. And the lab determined that all of them would be qualified as radioactive waste here in the United States and would have to be shipped to Texas to be disposed of. Now think about the ramifications for the nation's capital, whether it's Tokyo or the United States. How would you like it if you went to pick your flowers and were kneeling in radioactive waste? That's what's happening in Tokyo now. And I think that's the point that Chairman Yasko was trying to make. When the Nuclear Regulatory Commission does its cost-benefit analyses now, it doesn't take into account the cost to society if you have to evacuate for generations, or if you have to move 100,000 people, perhaps forever. There's 100 miles between us and about a dozen nuclear power plants here in Washington, D.C. Fukushima was almost 200 miles away from Tokyo. And yet Tokyo soil, in some places, the ones I just happened to find, would qualify as radioactive waste here in the States. How would we feel if our nation's capital were contaminated to that degree? So I agree with Chairman Yasko. New nukes and old nukes that are being relicensed should include as a cost in their analysis what we've learned to be happening in Tokyo and in Japan. Thank you very much, and I'll keep you informed.
And so there you go. You can look in this article. I'm going to have the link here. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can have the link here. If you're on listening to this via podcast on iTunes, you can go to my website or go to this video and see the documents here. But there's a laboratory test results, and as you saw in the video, he goes through there, and of course this is a lot of scientific data. We're not going to get into it, but if it'll load here, basically showing the areas he went to. He went to Shibuya, Kamakura, and so on and so forth. There's a playground, there's a roof, there's parks where people are going right there. The soil, he sent it in, and basically the letter addresses him and says, thank you for sending the samples from Japan. It's going to be research. It's going to be tested at the Worcester Polytech Institute, and basically they're doing it for free for him in exchange for publishing the results in public domain. So just showing the results there, showing the facts, the proof, and you saw him picking those samples up, and he's really coming out and saying a lot about this. You saw, I think it was my update number 2 a couple weeks ago, an interview from him and on the Infowars.com show. But I wanted to go back to this real quick. I want to keep this short and sweet, but I wanted to go back to this. When it talks about, well, first of all, contamination of that nature is being discovered throughout Japan. If I recall correctly, a while back they released news about people, like actual Japanese people, using Geiger counters, and they were being basically either taken away from them or being kind of criticized for using them. And it's crazy that they would do that, and they have a right to know. They have a right to know what's going on and what's going on around them. And also down in the article as well, or down in this intro to the video that I just read before the video, talking about the evacuation costs in a U.S. city. I mean, think about all the reactors that are around. There are a lot on the coast. There are a lot where I'm from in Texas. There's one, and they actually use the dry cast storage system for the used and the spent fuel rods, unlike the Fukushima one, which we'll look at in other updates about how the fuel was actually stored and what caused the issues that we have now. And it's a cheaper way to do it, but of course you see when you build a nuclear power plant on a fault line that's known to have in a country that's known to have earthquakes and prone to tsunamis, guess what happens? We saw what happened, and we're reaping the horrific results of it right now. The dry cast system is much safer, and of course where I'm from, it's in the middle of Texas, so we're not going to have any earthquakes that we know of, or enough to cause any problems. But they just made me remember that when you talk about when you talk about evacuating a U.S. city, he kind of relates the distance of Fukushima to Tokyo. Tokyo being the capital city, and the distance there is like one of our reactors, and then being our capital of the country. And how much craziness that would cause, and the cost of evacuating a city like that. This is a grave danger that we face when dealing with nuclear energy. And we've seen what happens Japan has got to be the worst example of what could happen, and of course following in Chernobyl's footsteps. But of course, as I've looked at, and many experts have said that this is much worse than Chernobyl, but yet we are taking very little measures to correct the problem, or to have prevented the problem in the first place. So that's all I'm going to say there. I'm going to keep these short, and with the video clip we're getting close to 10 minutes here, and so I want to end there. Until next time, like I said, I will be trying to get some interviews on, but until next time, this has been foodoffensive.com's weekly Fukushima update. Thank you for joining me.